Welcome back. All right, so way back in the day, before I ever did hockey videos on my main channel, I reviewed Doctor Who episodes. So it's been that long, and here we are, we're back. And I'm talking about Doctor Who episodes because I do like Russell T Davis and the series that he has, but am I gonna say that every single episode is fantastic? No. The episode I watched last night, Space Babies, weird. Very weird. Now you can sort of ignore the fact that their mouths don't look like they're moving organically because they're not. You know they're it's all CGI. I did actually find myself entertained by a couple of the babies and the faces they were making, and they just seem like very sweet little because they're babies. And I did laugh at the doctor yelling, "It's Boogeyman," and they all start crying. I did find that funny because just weird. I couldn't figure out why he was doing that either, other than just for fun. And there is an air of that in this season, but it does feel like it's a reboot, and I think that's what people might be getting irritated by. There's a lot of exposition, a lot of exposition dumps in this episode, and I thought, I get it because they're trying to appeal to a new audience. It's on Disney Plus, so they're hoping to get more American viewers. And so they got to explain these things and how he's a Time Lord and he's the last of his people. And I've already seen people saying, "Hey, we know he's not the last of his people," but for this Doctor, that's the storyline they're telling. The storyline changes, and there have been paradoxes, Doctor Who related, going back to, man, I want to say like fourth Doctor, third Doctor, things that you'd see and go, well, wait a minute. But based on that other episode, the thing is, if the writing's good, you can overlook it. And at times in this episode, I thought the writing was pretty good. At other times, not as great. And so I'm going to continue on because it does feel like Doctor Who. And again, anybody who's going to say, "Oh, the old Doctor Who used to be better," really, because they fought with a scribble. The 10th Doctor era, he fought with a scribble. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was rewatching Doctor Who, and especially the Rose 10th Doctor love storyline. Oh, he's always loved her. You sure? Because he sure was quick to lip lock other women. And yeah, at times there was no hint of anything between the Doctor and Rose, and then all of a sudden they're in love and they're separated. And I understand, and I mean, hey, I found that devastating too when they're separated in their different dimensions and all. But to basically frame it that it's one of the greatest loves ever, I think it just shows that when the writing is good, it's very good because it'll pull you into that. But again, if you go back and rewatch it, I mean, there's moments where sure you can see Rose and the Doctor are really flirty, but yeah. And I feel like with this, they're kind of not recreating the Eighth Doctor, but it feels very similar. In that Ruby Tuesday is very much like Rose Tyler. She's just jumped into this. She's just there. There doesn't seem to be any concern, any worry about her life and her safety. She doesn't seem to be having any of these moments of, okay, wait a minute. I just traveled through time, and I'm in a different part of the universe. Can we discuss this? That's not a thing. That has not been happening yet. Now maybe she's just all juiced up on this idea of going on adventures, and maybe in a later episode we'll see that. But yeah, and I mean, it was a snot monster. And there were a few too many potty humor jokes for my liking in this episode. Just a few too many for my liking. I understand it's a show for kids. I'm glad that they seem to be leaning into this idea of making it so that it's child friendly. Great, fine, because there have been times over the years where it gets a little bit too intense. But I think it is going to get too intense for some of the younger children as well, so we'll see. But again, the exposition to me was a little bit much. It got to be a little bit much, and I feel like so going back to the Eighth Doctor. What did we find out about Chris Eccleston's Doctor early? Not much. We found out as the season went along that all the Time Lords were dead. As the season went along, that the Doctor may have had something to do with, and there was a dark secret. What I love about the Chris Eccleston era Doctor is he is both funny and kind of joking around all the time, and then like that he can turn serious, and he might murder everybody. And it was that difference between the happy-go-lucky Eighth Doctor and the or Ninth Doctor. Apologies, Ninth Doctor. Eighth Doctor deserves his own series. The Eighth Doctor absolutely deserves his own series. Absolute shame he never had one. He just had the Doctor Who movie in 1996, and then everybody moved on. But Paul McGann deserves his own series. Give him his own series. I know he's done a bunch of the audiobooks, but yeah, give Paul McGann his own series. So it has a Ninth Doctor feel, but I guess it gets the eighth too, a little bit, because there's sort of an Americanization I've picked up on already, this first episode. And we'll see if that's the case. Now, I know the second episode includes the Beatles. I've already heard that the Beatles aren't in it a lot, and it's not really key to the storyline that they're there. But it's a hook, right? It's to get people to watch the episode. The ratings were really, really low in the Jodie Whittaker era, so you do what you can to get those viewers to come back. So Ruby to me is a cross between Rose and Clara. So she's running into everything, but the way she talks, her mannerisms, some of this, it's very Clara like. She now whether maybe Millie Gibson just has some of the same mannerisms as Jenna Coleman. Maybe that's all it is. But there were certain lines she delivered, and I'm like, okay, does anybody else hear Clara? Because I hear it. It's there. And it feels like she kind of looks like Rose. Her personality is closer to Clara than Rose. There's definitely something to that. And of course, you had the Impossible Girl storyline with Clara. And in this one, there's the What Is She storyline with Ruby Tuesday as well. A name which is clearly Ruby Sunday. Ruby Tuesday's a song from the Rolling Stones. Man, see, if this was a hockey video, I would have gone back and restarted already. But it's a Doctor Who review of an episode, so who's going to watch it? But I do agree with people that are saying that Ncuti Gatwa's accent is inconsistent, although I've also seen people saying, yeah, that's how he talks. There are times where he sounds really American, where that accent really kind of falls away. And, I know he was in the Barbie movie. He didn't have a British accent in that movie. Maybe for him, it's one of those things where he slips in and out of the accent. I try not to be distracted by it, just like the Ninth Doctor was from the North. Sound like you're from the North. A lot of planets have a North. Done. And that's the thing, too, though, is that a lot of the time, little inconsistencies and little things would be addressed by the show, and it'd just kind of be a throwaway line. Like, oh, yeah, yep, he talks that way. Big deal. We haven't seen that yet with this Doctor. I think eventually we probably get that at some point during these episodes. But the accent is kind of inconsistent. And to me, yeah, again, Ruby is an echo of previous companions, which I didn't get with Bill, and I didn't get that during the Jodie Whittaker era either. I had to pause because my cat really decided she's going outside and she's going to yell at the door, so I had to go tell her to knock it off. But so the Doctor's accent's inconsistent, and one other thing that kind of feels like an echo of storylines gone by is the snow. So they think about, the past, and then the snow shows up from the night that she's born, if it's snow. And that's the question I've had, even back to that, is, okay, but what else is going on here? Because I know that this is going to be the overarching plot throughout the series. So what's going on here? She was scanned by him. She shows under the scans as being human. Really feels like Clara again, doesn't it? But I do think there's something else there. I think there's definitely something else there. My theory is still that she's a Time Lord. She's somehow been camouflaged as a human. She may very well be whatever the Doctor is supposed to be, because remember, he's not technically a Time Lord. He's the Timeless Child. I'm kind of surprised Russell T Davies hasn't retconned that and taken that out, but I do think he's going to change that storyline just a little bit. I think he'll advance it and change it a little bit, and I think Ruby's part of that. The fart cloud and I don't know. Does that qualify as a spoiler? Does it? If you haven't seen the episode, you're gonna be like, a fart cloud in space? Yeah, that happened. I will let that speak for itself. I thought it was stupid. I thought that's really stupid. And I get that there's potty humor, and there's a reason I picked this picture here for the magnet on the board. So this is the Ninth Doctor and the Slitheen. So when people say, "Oh, that old space babies, that's the dumbest thing ever," no, the Slovene, the first time they're in an episode, and it was a two-parter, that was the dumbest villain they've ever had on the show. That was one of the dumbest ideas they've had, and then they fixed it. They fixed it because they had one member of the Slovene in the next episode that the Slovene were in, and that was Boomtown, and that episode was absolutely fantastic. So I don't want to get too, I don't want to pile on this episode. I know people online have already talked about it. This is stupid. This is terrible. I'm never going to watch it again. And I guess they're the same people who said they were never going to watch it again when Matt Smith took over, never going to watch it again when Peter Capaldi took over, definitely not going to watch it again when Jodie Whittaker took over, and now they're never going to watch it again when Ncuti Got was there. So it's a lot of people that are never going to watch it again that have been saying this for about 10 years now, because well, people do. I'm never watching this again. I see that with hockey all the time. I'm never watching the NHL again. You sure hear a lot, but consider you don't watch it anymore. But the fart cloud in space was tough. That was tough. And then I obviously Ruby wanted to take the police box to the night of her birth, and the doctor says nope, that'll create a paradox, which tells me we are absolutely going back to the night of her birth. We always create paradoxes, always. But again, this is an echo of Rose. Remember now, Rose goes back to try to save her dad from dying, which creates a paradox, and she ends up holding herself like an infant version of herself, which creates this whole, like, you got time wraiths and all this, and it's just it was bonkers when they did that back with the Ninth Doctor, and I feel like we're going to see something like that again. I think there will be a paradox. I think we're going to see Ruby go back to the night of her birth. The woman that dropped her off, my guess is somehow it's going to be Ruby herself. Maybe we're going to do a Red Dwarf, right? Or Roboros. Maybe we're going to do a Red Dwarf with this. And maybe we won't get a definitive answer of what's going on, just like we didn't with Lister and Red Dwarf. Which, for people old enough or for people who've watched Red Dwarf, you guys know what I'm talking about. And Red Dwarf had bad episodes. So I don't look at this episode and say, that's it, I'm never watching this again. This is stupid. If you go back and watch the first episode of the Ninth Doctor, where you had the Autons, which are the mannequins, come to life, it's not great viewing. It's not a fantastic episode. They're not the greatest of villains. And while people complain about some of the special effects in this episode, I kind of thought it was fun going back to some campy special effects. I thought the bit with the dinosaurs there was more realistic than some of the other dinosaur stuff we've seen over the years. But campy special effects, they're kind of a hallmark of Doctor Who. So the idea of, it didn't look as polished. No, it looked really polished with the Jodie Whittaker era, and it was awful. It was terrible. So while I'm not saying last night's episode that I watched was great, and I've only, again, watched the first of the two episodes, I'm not going to get mad at the show and stop watching it as a result. The only reason I stopped watching the Jodie Whittaker era is because it didn't feel like Doctor Who anymore. It was like, all right, so this is a show that happens to have a TARDIS in it and a Time Lord. This doesn't feel like Doctor Who. This one, even if the episode wasn't fantastic, felt like Doctor Who. It absolutely did. But again, when I rewatch Doctor Who, I don't want to rewatch all the episodes. I watch a handful of episodes from each season. So the idea that, well, that first episode wasn't any good, so clearly this whole series is going to be bad. Nah, I can go through and start doing Doctor Who videos and talk about the worst episode from each season. And there are some really bad episodes in each season, so it'd have some competition. We've had societies where people and cats mated. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how far you want to go down that rabbit hole, but the idea that somehow Last Night with Space Babies breaks it, humans having kittens might be. That was weird. That was flat out weird. So yeah, for me, I think the show has definitely gone down some interesting paths in the past. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They were trying something different. I did laugh out loud a few times at last night's episode. It was silly. The fart cloud did not make me laugh. It made me just say, what? And then Yvonne explained it to me as if I was actually not aware of what I'd seen. I was aware of what I'd seen, just my reaction to that was, what? Like, just, why? And then, of course, you get into there's no sound in space, but I guess you have to have the fart noise because why would it make that noise? I don't understand. I don't why it wouldn't it but it doesn't. Like if you're in a room and then you open the door, it doesn't make that noise as it goes out. I don't and how do you it doesn't it kind of broke me. That's the one moment in the episode where I was like, really? Like I was on board. Like, okay, so we're doing this like it's a nursery rhyme or it's a children's story, and you've got a boogeyman downstairs, and you've got these kids, and these babies, and there's some funny jokes here, and we're finding out about Ruby and the Doctor. And when you're finding out about a new Doctor, it's better not to have like Daleks or Cybermen or one of like the main villains in there. And to just have not a throwaway, but to have somebody that I mean, if they're not back in the episode, it's fine. But clearly, there's a tie-in. So the church, the Ruby Sunday Church of Ruby Road, there, Church on Ruby Road episode. She's a baby in that episode. There's a lot of talk about babies. This episode had babies in it. So I mean, there's a through line there, and of course, the whole overarching plot is about Ruby when she's a baby and her origins. So there's an overarching plot there. It's just a little bit clunky in places, but it's there. So if I had to grade this episode, let's say out of 10, 6.5. I'll say 6.5. Yep. I laughed enough to give it a 6.5. The fart cloud drops it from a 7.5. If you didn't have the fart cloud, I might have attempted to go 7.5, but no. No. I refuse to believe that fart power can get you from one planet to another. No. It couldn't get you from Earth to the moon. No. Bad Doctor Who. But, again, I give it credit for its stuff. I don't even know what to give it credit for. And also, I did catch the part where it's clearly an echo of Doctors Gone By. So, the first time that the Ninth Doctor takes Rose, I was going to say Ruby, takes Rose out of her comfort zone. He takes her to the future to see the destruction of the Earth. So there's this big moment where the window opens up and she's like, I'm seeing the Earth and this is the future and this is a completely different. And everybody I know is gone. Everybody's dead. And the Ninth Doctor goes, no, well, and he grabs her phone and goes, and then she can call her mom back in present day because the phone can go through time. Last night I'm watching this episode and I'm like, okay, so Ruby opens up a window to see she's in space and it's another planet. It's great. She knows it's in the distant future, so everybody she knows and loves is dead. And so the Doctor jury rigs her phone so that she can talk to her mom in present day. Okay, we've done this. We've done this. It is definitely, and it was almost line for line exactly the same as I'd remembered it from that other episode. So I did find that to be, and I mean, you could call it heavy handed, I guess, but when an episode is 19 years beyond the other episode, I totally understand wanting to use those plot points. And again, because they're treating this like a soft reboot, I get it. But yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how this series goes. It's going to be very interesting to see how this series goes and what the overarching storyline ends up being. And how Ruby's going to be explained. 'Cause I do think Ruby's going to die and come back to life. That's my prediction, is that somewhere along the way, she's going to die and come back. Not like Rory. Rory had a million lives, and I don't know how, because he was just a dude. But he had like a million lives, because why not? And sometimes he was synthetic, and sometimes he was Rory. It was weird, but that was Doctor Who, and maybe at some point I'll talk about that as well, because yeah, there have been some bonkers storylines. So when people get mad at this and go, "Oh, I'm never going to watch again because this is dumb," yeah, we've gone through some really dumb episodes. There were pirates, there were space pirates. It's not as cool as you think either. The Curse of the Black Spot. I've never finished that episode. I get really mad at the fact that Amy Pond picks up a sword and she magically she knows how to use a sword and she can sword fight. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Now she's better than pirates who've been pirates forever. She just puts on the pirate hat and grabs a sword. And as beautiful as Karen Gillan is as a pirate wielding a sword, I didn't buy that, and I was like, I can't watch the rest of this. I can feel my IQ points just dropping off, just very rapidly too. But anyways, there you go. Let me know what you thought of the episode if you watched it. Once I've watched the second episode, which I plan to do tonight, I will do a review for that as well, probably tomorrow. And I do intend to review every episode of this season of Doctor Who. Going back, way back in time to when I used to review every single episode. And I didn't do that with Whittaker because I didn't watch. But Peter Capaldi, I watched his episodes. Man, there were some bad ones during his era too. But when it was good, man, it was great. So maybe I need to go through each series and pick out what the best episode was from each series and what the worst was, just in case you're relatively new to Doctor Who and you're like, what should I watch if I'm going to start watching this series? So there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. If you haven't already hit like and subscribe, please do. I will talk to you again soon. But seriously, fart cloud in space?